Hi, it's Alex Cosper at the American River. Welcome to another SacTV.com Riverside Chat. Today is January 11th, 2025, and it's the first video of the year I've made for SacTV. And I just want to say right now I'm at the beautiful River Bend Park, which is exactly across the river, across this bridge, the Harold Ritchie Bridge, from William Pond Park on the other side of the bridge. And this is one of my favorite places on the American River. Now, last time I left off talking about how the city of Sacramento was charging people to park downtown even on Sundays, you know, and anyone who wants to visit the river has to pay a bunch of money and then walk far. Yet the city manager is making $400,000 a year. You're telling me they know how to manage budgets, and they're trying to cut costs and raise revenue by, you know, instigating parking fees when it used to never be that way? I mean, this isn't San Francisco, that's a tourist town that everyone goes to from all over the world, and they're willing to pay for parking just to see the sights everywhere. Here you don't have a lot of that type of scenery. You do have natural beauty like here at the river, but Sacramento isn't really thought of that way as a tourist attraction on any level. I would argue that it is for going to the American River, but people who don't care that much about the river or nature aren't going to think so. They're just going to think, oh, there's nothing to do. There's no big amusement parks here. There's, you know, there's nothing. And that's kind of true. There really is nothing once you get downtown except hospitals, office buildings. You know, healthcare is like one of the top industries in this town, behind government, which is the top industry in town. So you got a lot of government offices downtown, and that's not something, besides the state capitol and maybe City Hall, those aren't places normal people or tourists would want to visit. So you know, Sacramento, I was not putting down Sacramento, the city, at all. Yeah, maybe the city of Sacramento as a government body, yeah, they're inept. They're bad at math. They don't know how to count. They don't know how to conserve a budget. They know how to waste money on themselves, which is why the city manager gets $400,000 a year, which is more than the mayors throughout California and as much as the President of the United States. So, I mean, California is the 5th strongest economy in the world, so it's like a country, unlike any other state in the United States. But still, it's not justified that just because this is the capital city of the state, that the city manager should make $400,000 a year when it's having budget shortfalls and then forcing local residents to pay for parking for no reason downtown when there's nothing to see down there. Except maybe Old Sac. There's Golden One Center near Old Sac, and that's where the Kings play. So if you go to a Kings game, which costs a lot of money, then yeah, I could see why you'd want to park downtown and pay for parking. But for the most part, there's not much to see downtown. You can walk around and go shopping, but you'll find much better deals on the outskirts of Sacramento and the communities surrounding downtown and midtown. So anyway, I was not, like I think someone responded to my last video saying, oh, Sacramento, what a suck place to live, or something like that, just because the city government sucks. Okay, I wasn't trying to make the point that Sacramento sucks as a natural beauty, you know, in terms of its valley, its trees, the two rivers. It's a beautiful place, and that's what I've stressed all along, that this is like a great place to live. It's like a laid-back atmosphere compared to a lot of the United States. Not you know, the Midwest, you pay less, but you get less for that. You know, you also have to deal with hurricanes and tornadoes and, you know, bad weather conditions. Whereas Sacramento doesn't really have that many bad weather conditions. Unlike in Southern California, where you're constantly dealing with high winds and wildfires and drought. That combination, plus Los Angeles is like a desert, a city built on a desert that has no water itself other than the Pacific Ocean, which you can't drink. It's toxic. So they have to pipe in water from the Sierra Nevada mountains. And in the process, they're actually robbing communities of their water where it would be better served. They ended up draining a lake called Owens Lake that used to be a pretty deep lake up there in the Sierra Mountains. But Los Angeles tapped into that water supply. And, you know, it's good to know a little bit about the history of Los Angeles before you start trying to decide whose fault it is about the wildfires that have been ongoing in the first few weeks of this new year. You know, the wildfires are out of control in Los Angeles. It's causing many people to lose their homes. There are places they're getting completely wiped out, like Pacific Palisades, and the fire department doesn't have enough water to put out these fires or keep them under control. So it's not like in the past where they were able to find solutions how to put out fires. Now we're dealing with worse climate change every year. How do I know it's climate change and I'm not being brainwashed by some media thing that's telling me it's some hoax about climate change? Because the oil industry, oil companies admitted that they were the hoax, that were covering up the damage they were causing. As far back as the 1950s, they started documenting the climate change damage they were causing. And it said so in their reports. And instead of looking for solutions to fix the problem that they were creating, they invested their money in covering up the problem and then spreading false hoaxes about there's no such thing as climate change throughout big dumb media, which is willing to go along with any story if you pay them. Especially if it's big bucks, like the oil industry has helped fuel the media industry all along with big bucks in advertising and PR. PR stands for public relations. It's a form of hidden advertising disguised as news stories, in which big entities use third parties to funnel money through, and that it eventually ends up in the hands of big dumb media. But in the process, they teach the media to come up with good stories that paint these entities in positive light. And media is dumb, obviously, because it promotes junk food more than health food. It'll take money from anywhere that's paying it a stack of cash, regardless of the consequences of how it spreads ignorance. So yeah, I blame big dumb media the most for all of that. Now that brings us up to Los Angeles, the wildfires. People are trying to blame Gavin Newsom for that. I don't blame him at all for that, or homelessness. He gave millions of dollars to cities and counties to solve the homeless problem, because that's what a state does. It's like a big bank, and they don't want to micromanage every little city, especially when there's all these different locations with different zoning laws. So that makes it complex. That's why he sent the money to the local jurisdictions, and they ended up wasting it because of lousy local leadership everywhere, including Los Angeles. Los Angeles didn't do anything about the homeless problem. Sacramento, another loser local controlled government town, controlled by losers who don't know how to count, don't know how to manage money. All they know how to do is spend money on themselves, like give themselves bigger raises. And it's just a bunch of self-serving, whatever, fill in the blank, hypocrites or whatever. So yeah, at the local level, you got lousiness. And that's the level that people can change the most. Like you can go to city council meetings or county board of supervisor meetings, and your voice can be heard at these meetings. And I've never gone because I've fallen into the big dumb crowd that thinks that can't solve anything. But the more I study it, the more I'm waking up, and maybe I should get involved. But anyway, if more people got involved at the local level, then you could fix government, at least at the local level, so that it's not corrupt at all levels. I mean, it's just simple, okay? Now, getting back to nature versus government, who's in charge when things go wrong? Well, when there were like wind fires and wildfires in Northern California, turned out it was PG&E's fault. They're a utility company, a corporate utility company. And turns out they didn't invest much in infrastructure all this time. They just let all their equipment get old. So power lines were easier to blow over, and then that caused fires. And Gavin Newsom busted them for that, okay? He came down hard on PG&E, which ended up going bankrupt and then reorganized. But yeah, he called them out about how it was their fault, and it was, by being greedy instead of helping the community. And that's the nature of corporations. They're more like, oh, we got to just keep feeding ourselves and not give a crap about the world. So yeah, he was good at that, and he's been good at cracking down on the liars at the oil industry. And the good thing about the oil industry finally is they've admitted that they were the deceivers all along, who tried to, you know, trick America into thinking there's no such thing as climate change, when they were helping cause it, okay, with the burning of fossil fuels, which aren't really fossilized fuels. That's just what they're called based on a meeting in the late 1800s by oil executives. They just figured they'd call it that because it, I guess, has a ring to it that cries out for government subsidies, because that makes it seem like a finite resource. And so the scarcity means you got to keep investing in it to keep the prices low for the public. But anyway, there's like unlimited oil in the ground for the next several centuries. It's just that it costs more and more the deeper you drill, and the more you drill, the more you're wrecking the environment. So Newsom has been a champion at cracking down on the oil companies and keeping them under control without letting gas prices get super out of control. Because if you don't regulate and manage the oil companies, they'll come up with these fake crises that they invent, like a fire at their processing plant, and so they have to shut down the plant for a while to investigate, and that drives up gas prices. They've done that in the past and gotten away with it. But Newsom really has been one of the first governors of California to call their crap and to come down on the oil industry. So yeah, I don't blame him for that, and I don't blame him for the wildfires, okay?
Death toll to increase. Over 100,000 residents remain under evacuation orders in the Palisades, Eaton, Hearst, Kenneth, and Lydia fires, according to the Los Angeles County Sheriff. Firefighters continue to battle the wildfires spread across the Los Angeles area. The largest, the Palisades fire, has now scorched over 21,000 acres and destroyed thousands of structures.
Never in a million years would we think that a fire would come down and completely destroy not just this neighborhood, but half or more of the entire Pacific Palisades. It's devastating. It's surreal. It's hard to put into words.
In Washington, President Biden pledging to pay for 100% of the state's immediate costs for the next 180 days.
Nature versus government. When it comes to wildfires, I would say that when you have 100-mile-an-hour winds in Southern California and drought, years of drought, and it's blowing fire around that can easily start from all that dryness, I guess I would hold the state responsible for not doing anything about preparing people to leave that area, to just evacuate it. Quit thinking LA is a good place to live just because the weather's nice. I mean, it does get warm weather most of the year, and it's sunny, and it's, you know, it's got beautiful beaches, but it's a desert, okay? They pipe in water, and they did it deceptively starting in the early 1900s. A guy named William Mulholland knew about just waterways and stuff like that, and so he convinced the city of Los Angeles to invest in this thing called the Los Angeles Aqueduct that runs from the Sierra Nevadas to the city of Los Angeles through this gravitational pipe that goes downward, sloping down a mountain. So it draws water from a higher elevation than down to sea level. But it's not enough water to put out the fires in Los Angeles. They always have water shortages in Los Angeles, and a lot of that has to do with it's just a desert, okay? Las Vegas is the same way, and they built Hoover Dam near it to help provide some water from the Colorado River, but really those are two cities just built on deserts and probably shouldn't be there as livable places, and shouldn't be promoted that way. Yet big dumb media promotes Hollywood, and LA is this fantastic place to live, and if you live there it means you're smart and you're rich and you've succeeded just by living there. So a lot of people move there for that reason, and then they struggle financially because they can't find the Hollywood job of their dreams. Okay, only so many people are gonna get signed up through Hollywood, and we already know that process involved like sexual favors from people like, what was his name, Weinstein, whatever, that clown. It was a rapist who ended up in prison because he was a movie producer, and you had to have sex with him to make it into his movies. And that was just a microcosm of the problem in Hollywood, how it's all controlled. So yeah, I don't favor that crap. I think there's better ways of filtering out non-talent than through sexual favors. But Hollywood started around 1903. That's when it was incorporated as a local municipality, and was even its own city for a while. Then they merged with the city of Los Angeles, and so then by 1911, that's when Hollywood movie production studios escaped from the East Coast to the West Coast. And these were companies that were trying to escape the movie monopoly on the East Coast that was controlled by Thomas Edison, who was able to extract royalty fees from all filmmakers just because he invented the movie camera. And eventually the Supreme Court ruled he was a monopoly in that business, and it got broken up. And so Hollywood was independent of all that crap early on, and it was a successful profitable business just within a few years of you know, starting all those movie studios there. That was one of the reasons why LA became a popular place. But even around that same time, it was because the LA Aqueduct was installed in 1913. So that brought water piped in from the mountains into Los Angeles, which was otherwise a dry city. Okay, but it's always never been enough water, and it actually drained Owens Lake. And people up in the mountains, there were farmers and families that got burned by that whole deal. They were tricked into agreeing with the city of Los Angeles to let them steal their water and part of what made that happen was President Theodore Roosevelt in 1906 signed an order that allowed Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles, to steal the water from Owens Valley, forcing a lot of farmers and families there to leave the area. Okay, it also drained Owens Lake, which used to be one of the deepest lakes in America, and it turned it into a toxic dust bowl that spread toxic dust particles everywhere by the 1930s. So it was all bad, and plus there was a part of the LA Aqueduct, a different section of it, from a different water source, I believe. It had a dam that Mulholland oversaw the building of, and that broke, and it caused 400 people to die from flooding in the 20s. And Mulholland didn't have to go to jail or anything, but he did take responsibility for it. It was just a stupid dam that was built, engineered poorly, because it didn't account for water seeping under the foundation and then causing pressure to push up, creating cracks, and then ultimately it failed. So yeah, there's man-made technology that has been destroyed by nature because nature is stronger than humans. Nature is stronger than governments. Okay, people need to understand that. Otherwise, you'll never understand what's really going on with these LA wildfires. That it's a city built on a desert that for about a century got away with stealing water from the mountain people, and dried up a lake in the process, and it still isn't enough water to put out the fires. And now Newsom, I praised him earlier saying it wasn't his responsibility, but he actually has done something, I think, careless by supporting a new tunnel from Northern California to Southern California. It's like a 46-mile tunnel or something like that, 36 feet wide. And it's gonna damage the environment in Central California, the construction of this tunnel that's proposed for sometime in the future. So he has approved of that. So people who think he's not doing anything for Southern California are just wrong. I think that's a bad idea. I think a better idea is to encourage people in Southern California to relocate, to get out of that zone that's a disaster zone and will continue to be a disaster zone for years to come. I mean, not only do you have the threat of wildfires, you have the threat of dangerous earthquakes down there. So it's like a place that you're not supposed to live near. But people want to live there anyway because of the glamour of Hollywood. And Disneyland isn't that far away in Anaheim, so it's got a lot of famous landmarks there that are invented by people, stacks of money invested in it. But really, those are more like tourist attractions, and I think that's how they should be handled. And big businesses that are located in Los Angeles that don't have to be there, they should consider moving elsewhere. And you know, you have the Port of Los Angeles, which is like one of the biggest ports in America, and it involves the imports from China, which is California's biggest trading partner. So China is buying up areas of the Port of Los Angeles that they can control, and that's the more Trump tries to create tension with tariffs on China and the trade war with them, well, the more they're just going to execute their influence over the Port of Los Angeles and jack up prices. Has Gavin Newsom done anything for workers, or is it just all corporations? No, he's cracked down on corporations and he's helped workers. He raised the minimum wage at fast food restaurants to $20 an hour. And of course, that has consequences if you're a consumer of fast junk food. I'm usually not. I sometimes turn to it in emergencies when there's nothing else available. But for the most part, I try to stick with food from the earth as opposed to just chemically processed food. And I guess don't care if they keep raising the rates, the prices at junk food restaurants. I guess because I don't eat there much. But that has helped workers. And you have to remember, you have to see the big picture whenever you're evaluating economics. It's always going to be like kind of this push and pull thing with consumers and corporations, which affects jobs, of course. But if you have higher costs for corporations, they're going to just, slap higher prices on their products for consumers. So, and supply chains are an issue because, the transport of goods from the manufacturer to the retail outlet through distribution services, that costs money. So that's when Jimmy Carter, as president, busted up the transportation industry, making it more possible for independent truckers to enter the business at lower wages, and that was their selling point against unions, is that they could do the same job for a lower price. So Jimmy Carter was helping the consumer because at that time there was high inflation back in 1980, and consumers were complaining about high prices at the stores. So he helped bring down prices a lot by cutting prices on transportation. See, that did hurt the truckers union. Okay, so you see how there's this balance involved, and it's not always just one politician's fault. So I'm for prioritizing nature over the government and corporations. That's right, nature should be the priority. It is for me, and when I plan out my life, I planned nature as the core, like my environmental surroundings. And since I'm near the American River, which is naturally preserved for the most part, it's a great place to live. I'm close to nature. So anyway, it's a nature problem more than a government problem when I think about the wildfires in Los Angeles. It's a shame. I know people who live there. I visited Pacific Palisades and stayed there with a friend. That was back in the late 80s when I stayed there. And I thought it was a beautiful place. Pacific Palisades is also where President Reagan lived for a while. But it's been destroyed by fire, much of the city. And there was really nothing that could be done to stop it unless you had already evacuated people years ago from the area. So that's what I think big dumb media should work on, is trying to spread knowledge about nature rather than all this corporate crap that is the cause of all these problems. I blame corporations more than government because they're the ones who are profiting off all this environmental destruction, and they're the ones fueling all the climate change that doesn't need to happen, that might have happened anyway, but corporations don't help. They make it worse. So those are my thoughts on early 2025 so far. Hopefully the year gets better, and I'm hoping my friends in Los Angeles are safe and are able to deal with the issue without it getting too confused by all this political nonsense and lack of water. So I'm gonna enjoy the water here. Today's a nice day in Sacramento while the fires burn in LA. I would encourage people to think about relocating from Los Angeles to possibly Sacramento if you don't mind giving up all the glamour and you know, taking more interest in kind of an easygoing back to nature lifestyle. We'll talk soon again for another Riverside chat here at the American River.